When a protagonist cannot be permanently killed by their enemies, the traditional physical stakes of a narrative simply evaporate. Writers typically patch this design problem by introducing a highly specific, kryptonite-like weakness, but relying on a magical glowing rock often feels like a contrived cheat code rather than a structural rule of the universe. The Chronicles of KANE approaches immortality through a strictly entropic lens. The character's condition operates as a failing biological system that requires constant, aggressive upkeep. This diagram illustrates KANE's internal biological dashboard. Instead of perpetual health, he is trapped in a state of rapid decay. To function, he must actively manage three distinct metrics: necrotic rot, sanity, and soil charge. This decay exerts a constant downward pressure. Without immediate and precise intervention, his physical form degrades and his mind fractures. Halting this process requires a continuous influx of rare, highly specific physical and magical resources. The true narrative tension in this universe lies in the logistics. The question is never whether KANE will die, but how he will fund the grueling daily nightmare of his continued existence. KANE's entropic condition originates from a vindictive curse cast by a betrayed witch in the final moments of her execution. The operational rule of this curse is unforgiving. KANE's body does not naturally heal. When damaged, the flesh forcibly arranges itself back into shape. This rearrangement carries a severe physiological toll. Every physical wound violently accelerates his entropic decay. This chart plots physical integrity against damage taken. Notice the immediate drops in sanity corresponding with every physical wound. Trauma scales directly with psychological degradation. If the sanity metric reaches this failure state, a condition called the hunger takes over. During this phase, the biological system completely bypasses KANE's willpower. It demands raw human flesh to fuel the rapid cellular rearrangement. When KANE takes massive damage, the hunger activates. He experiences an agonizing loss of control as his body forcefully extracts the resources it needs to rebuild. Because of this biological system, combat for KANE is always a net loss economic transaction. Winning a fight still cost him his humanity if he takes a hit. KANE's operations are primarily based in the dreaming empire of Dor within the dense, smog-choked city of Arkest. On this operational map, KANE's revenue generation node is the Tower of Chains, where he collects bounty payouts. That gold is instantly converted into biological stabilizers. The capital flows directly to a secondary node, operated by Gorlet the Alchemist. Gorlet produces a dark alchemical mixture, formulated precisely from embalming fluids and healing brews. These specific potions suppress the necrotic rot and stall the onset of the hunger. But this medical supply chain is highly exploitative. Gorlet leverages his monopoly to force prices high, keeping KANE on a deliberately short financial leash. This creates a strict, unending cyclical trap. KANE must hunt dangerous targets to afford the potion, but the combat inherently inflicts the damage that requires more potion. Missing a single dose removes the suppression mechanism, pushing the entire biological system toward total collapse. Immortality in this universe operates as a predatory subscription service. KANE is forever trapped on the logistical hamster wheel of paying for it. The biological stabilizers only solve half the equation. The system also requires a non-biological resource, the anchor medium. To keep his soul tethered to physical reality, KANE must carry consecrated soil sourced specifically from the Greythorn family crypt. This diagram illustrates the interaction between the soul anchor and ambient magical radiation known as void bleed. As the dark static energy strikes the outer ring of soil, it actively degrades the consecrated charge. During a consultation with the Lord Mage Sextal, KANE discovers that his current soul charge has been fatally depleted by prolonged void exposure. To repair this broken node, KANE must perform extreme system troubleshooting. He has to acquire a rare botanical component called a death blossom to reawaken the earth. Securing this component carries immense tactical risk. KANE must either barter with or steal from a highly hostile coven of witches just to patch his baseline system. Biological preservation is entirely useless if the soul untethers. KANE's vulnerability exists simultaneously on multiple concurrent existential fronts. We see this operational pragmatism tested during the siege in the underground vault beneath the Temple of Kodiak. KANE's combat methodology stands in sharp contrast to Captain Reese and the Paladins of Kodiak. On this tactical blueprint, the Paladins rely on rigid, dogmatic square formations, while the fluid green vectors represent the opposing Voidborn wave. The Mindslaver effortlessly breaks and corrupts these rigid formations, turning the disciplined lines into liabilities. KANE operates strictly outside of these lines. He survives by manipulating environmental geometry, collapsing chain racks and wedging shields to create artificial bottlenecks. He dismantles these cosmic threats using strictly low magic tools, like flash grenades, ward-breaking bolts, and mundane rope. When high magic and divine dogma fail due to predictability, ruthless operational pragmatism becomes the only mathematically viable survival strategy. In the aftermath of the siege, the cosmic threat is dead, but the corrupted Shadow Book remains on the altar. Captain Reese acts on a fatal flaw. His moral absolutism dictates that the blasphemous book must be burned to maintain the temple's purity. KANE operates entirely within a transactional reality. Delivering the intact book is the exact objective of his contract, and that contract funds his stabilizing alchemy. The ideological clash violently resolves. When Captain Reese attempts to destroy the asset, KANE is forced to act. KANE kills the Holy Paladin not out of malice, but out of sheer, cold, logistical necessity to secure his supply chain. In this specific grim-dark architecture, moral rigidity acts as a structural vulnerability, while economic pragmatism guarantees survival. The final proof of this system occurs during the climactic encounter between KANE, Grent, and the Holy Mage Hunters. Grent exploits KANE's physical limitations. Using divine magic and overwhelming numbers, he traps KANE without needing to deal a traditional killing blow. Grent pins KANE to the floor of a flooded crypt with a divine blade and simply orders his men to bury him alive. Looking back at the biological dashboard under these conditions, the result is critical. All data lines flatline near zero, triggering a total supply chain severance. Physical burial would comfortably end a normal narrative. For KANE, it halts his access to alchemy and soil, systematically starving him into a state of perpetual, feral madness. KANE's narrative power is derived directly from this ultimate vulnerability to physical containment and resource starvation. Tethering cosmic immortality to a grounded, fragile economic supply chain successfully turns an overpowered fantasy trope into a visceral, high-stakes operational thriller.